Oh, hey, I made a little collapsible table for my camper. While that's not really anything particularly new or revolutionary, I put this together just using scrap wood I had around the garage and less than $20 worth of hardware. Now in this video, I'm going to first show you my finished project here and the product that I discovered that made it possible. And then if you want, you can stick around and I'll take you through the process that I went through to build this. Now you will find chapter links down below so you can skip ahead to whatever bit interests you. Now this is my Topo Toppers Mesa camper. I've had it for about a year and I've been slowly working on building out the interior. I have a complete 10-part series now detailing all the aspects of what I've done building out the inside of this camper. And I will put a link to that playlist in the description below. Now adding some kind of a little table that I could sit down at was something I always knew I wanted to do, but it was a low priority. I put it off to the very end. The cabinetry that I built in here has this large blank space because on the other side, on the cargo door of my camper, it opens up to reveal my kitchen area. My intention all along was to use this space to create some sort of a little drop-down table that I could use to sit at in here, to work, to eat on a cold, stormy night. And that was always just a hazy idea. I just figured I would get some sort of pop-up, pop-down, locking hinge kind of thing. I've seen them in other campers. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. What I realized when I finally actually sat down and started working on this is that to have a table surface that's the size that I would like to have and at a comfortable sitting height, if it's hinged right there, it can't pop up because it's going to block my drawer up above. It can't fold down because it's going to block my drawers below. If I hinged it up here where it could drop down and not block anything, well, that's not really a very practical height. That got me to researching other possible ways I could go about doing that, and that's when I discovered this rail that is apparently fairly commonly used in the RV industry. Maybe you've seen it before. I was unfamiliar with it. It's very, very simple, and I paid basically $10 for this 30-inch length of this rail. One piece mounts on your surface, the other piece mounts on one edge of your table, shelf, whatever, and one just locks onto the other. Now I think this is designed to hold a fairly small, shallow shelf or to be used with a table that has some sort of additional support on the other side. I think that's the way it's commonly used. For the moment, I'm just using the rail. I'm going to see how it goes. I have a couple of ideas for providing additional support if I need it. Now I've set this up so it basically rides right here when I'm not using it. It doesn't get in my way when I'm moving around the camper. When I do want to use it, I just have to unhook my little bungee cords there and pop it onto the rail and I'm done. That's it. When I'm done, this just lifts right back off of there. It stows onto these little brackets that I made. Hook the bungees back up and I'm done. Now I just improvised this using the rail as a starting point and whatever materials I happen to have in the garage. And I'm not a particularly skilled craftsman. There are certainly better ways to do this, especially if you maybe planned it out a little better than I did. But I've almost nothing invested in this. We'll see how it goes. Here's the process that I went through to put this together, and this is not a how-to by any means. I'm just showing you what I did. I was originally thinking to use a piece of 1/2-inch plywood for this little drop-down table when I thought I was gonna, have it on hinges or something like that. And then I thought the rigidity of some 1/2-inch wood would be good, but I think it's gonna pose some challenges for attaching this rail to it because then I would be forced to just use wood screws down into it, and I suspect that would weaken over time. So poking around in the garage, I found this piece of ultra thin, lightweight plywood. This is less than 1/4 of an inch, I think. And I think this is actually left over from when Enoch was here working on his Xterra. I think this is what his cabinet walls are made of. This piece is actually already just the perfect size. It comes out sort of the right distance there. And the idea is that, I want to also store it right here, so it needs to be able to store in this space without blocking any of these drawers. So this piece is kind of ready-made. I don't have to go buy anything else. So that's going to involve building some kind of frame that this will mount onto, and then that way this material could be bolted onto that framework with screws going all the way through, and then actual bolts and washers, and I think that's going to be stronger if I can pull it together. And I think I might have some material in the garage that'll work for that. So I think I like the size of that. These are actually pieces of a broken painter's easel someone I know was throwing away. I salvaged it last year thinking it may eventually be useful for something. Looks like it's the perfect size for this rail to mount onto. My idea is to build as minimal a framework as possible, just enough to support that thin piece of plywood. I'm approaching this with my usual amateurish joinery of various size coarse thread drywall screws and no glue. To countersink the screw heads, I just use a larger bit and bore down slightly into the pilot hole, which creates a perfect conical space for the screw head. I'm sure any of you who are reasonably skilled wood craftsmen probably shudder at my techniques here. I just find that using these little drywall screws, it's fast, easy, it's good enough for what I do. It's easy to take back apart if I change my mind or make a mistake, which happens frequently. I've been using these for decades for, you know, random around the house handyman, homeowner, fix-it kind of stuff. I'm sure there are better techniques for what I'm doing, but I don't know them. I've usually been able to make this work just fine, so... I'm using the pre-drilled holes in the rail as a guide for drilling bolt holes all the way through the rear frame of the table. I didn't have the right sizes and combinations of nuts and bolts, so I did have to run to the hardware store to get everything I needed. I'm using fender washers to sort of spread the load, plus a lock washer and a nut. I know these bolts look a little too long, but these are only 1 1/4 inch. The next size down was 1 inch and felt just a little too short. Now that the tabletop is assembled, I need to mount the supporting rail onto the cabinet. So I've got this laid out at the height that I want it, and I've measured down so it's parallel to the countertop. The issue that I've noticed, however, is that apparently this sheet of plywood is no longer perfectly flat. I don't know if you can see that there's sort of a gap that opens towards the middle. So it's kind of bowing inward in that direction. I feel like if I just push this all the way up against the wood, the rail of the table is not going to fit in here because this is going to be curved. So I'm going to have to shim the back of that somehow. The bolts are going to pass through into my kitchen cabinet. I'll have to secure them with the washers and nuts from this side. Okay, so it took a little trial and error to find whatever material I had to sort of wedge in between here at different thicknesses. Some pieces of aluminum, some washers. I fiddled with it and finally got this looking pretty straight and tightened, all the bolts tightened down on the other side. And yep, it does work. All along I've thought I may have to make some sort of a support leg for this that I also just stash and would have to stick in here. But for how I'm going to use this might be fine. I may actually cut this down and make it a little bit smaller, but I wanted to at least try it this size and see. Seems to work. Now I just have to figure out some place to stash this. My idea is that this will go here somehow. Okay, so here's what I came up with to stow the table just using stuff that I found around the garage. So I made these little brackets out of 1-inch angle aluminums, drilled some holes and rounded the corners a bit, and those are mounted there so that they will receive the outermost bolts on the back side of this, right, actually even all the way through to the nut there. So that will sit right down in there. And I drilled a small hole in each end of the mounting rail here, so I can put a small bungee, and I put a single eye bolt down at the bottom that they each will hook into, across like that. And might rattle a little bit, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. At least we'll see. I have a couple of other ideas for ways I could do this, but I didn't have the materials here to do it, and I kind of wanted to get this to at least a functional state so that now I can do some kind of finish on this. If I need to go back and change the way this gets secured, then that's fine, but we'll see how this goes for now. Just unhook the bungees and put it on there, and I'm ready to go. Now, it occurred to me that these little brackets here give me sort of an anchor point that I could, make some sort of cables that would like help support this. So if I find that it needs more support, that might be a way to do it without making some sort of a leg. I'm rounding off the corners both for a more finished appearance, but also just to prevent me from snagging the corners when the table is deployed. Since this is kind of a mishmash of materials, I'm just painting it with the same paint I used on the rest of the cabinetry. So we'll see how this goes at this size and without any additional support beyond the rail. Obviously, I've got some options if I do need to modify it. I hope you found this video helpful or useful or give you some ideas possibly. If you have any questions about what I did, just post them in the comments below. In the description below, you will find links to the other videos about my camper build, and thank you for watching.